That's
Hey,
what we're doing.
do you guys like my virtual background that I have here?
Virtual.
Yeah.
Oh,
Here's my real background. Here's my real background.
Yeah.
And this is my virtual background. So
all right, you gotta do that.
I didn't
You
want
gotta
people to
run
realize
it.
it.
Well,
I didn't want people to realize this was actually my on my deck at home here in Oxnard. So I picked this instead to make it look like I was working.
And with that, on that note, welcome everybody to Talk Story. We have a very special guest here with us today, Pastor Lance Ralston. Thank you for joining us today, Pastor Lance.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Well, of course it's an honor to be here. I love your background. It's beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, not that one. Your real one.
So my real background. Here's my real, sitting on my deck at home doing work. But I didn't want people to think that, I was like living high on the hog. So I picked this virtual background.
Very humble.
Make it look like a pastor's study in the background here. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good thing.
Oh, that is too good, man. That's rich. Oh,
yeah, man, we haven't seen you. What has it been like? Maybe not even 2 months. It's only been maybe 5-6 weeks. The last time we saw you, we were at the Endure Prophecy Conference. How are you doing?
Fantastic. This is a difficult time for everyone. But hey, listen, we're learning a lot here at Calvary Chapel of Oxnard about how to do ministry, what's important in ministry. We're hearing great things about what God is doing around the world. And so, this is a rough time. But you know what Joseph said, what the enemy has meant for harm, God has turned to good.
Amen.
And we're seeing a lot of good being squeezed from this time right now. So we're rejoicing. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing really good. Same thing where I'm working from home. So after the conference, I ended up going to Australia to see my older son. He was turning 21. So when I came back, I had to go through self-quarantine. So 14 days of that ended, but then of course there was the stay at home order after that. So I'm working remotely from my house, and Doug is in the office. Doug lives pretty close to the office, but yeah, that's my life at the moment, just in front of a computer. How about you, Doug? How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. It's you kind of are waiting for this dream to end. You're waiting for the streets to be filled with people again. It's just so eerie. The longer it goes, the stranger it feels, because you're used to going into different worlds when you go into a theater. You're used to seeing strange things, but when it continues, that's when it starts to be kind of gets to you.
And you look out your window.
Exactly.
You look out your window. There,
right.
Yeah, it's great.
It's like an episode of The Walking Dead out there. It's just crazy.
Hey, no joke.
Hey, so a little bit later this month, 3 other pastors and I we were supposed to go on a hike of Israel. We were going to hike from the north to the south, and we were just super amped and excited for it, and that got canceled. Bummer.
That's a bummer. What about Easter plans right now? You've got Easter. This is a big week, and Easter's upon us. And how about that with the church? What are you guys doing? What are you doing differently? You mentioned you're learning a lot. So what's happening there in Oxnard?
So we've been doing streaming services on Facebook for quite some time. So that's not new, but we had to find some new platforms to stream. So we were streaming right from our own church website now. We have a low power FM station that we've had for years. So we're broadcasting the audio of that simulcast. So we're on those three venues. To live stream our services. We're not pre-recording them. We're actually doing them live at the time. And it's been interesting. We early on decided to make our stage look kind of like a living room, so that we could connect with people in the sense of, they're sitting at home, right, in their pajamas and on their couch with their kids playing. And so we decided to kind of connect that way visually. But tomorrow for Good Friday and then for Easter, we're going to flip it and go back to our regular stage setup and invite people that we've been kind of coming into their living rooms for the last few weeks to say, hey, remember what it's like to be here in our living room, the church's living room. Yeah. Don't forget what that's like, and to kind of invite them back into the service and invite them to kind of remember what all of that is like. So we got a Good Friday service planned at noon tomorrow, and then service at 9:30 on Sunday.
That's really good, Lance. And I was just listening to someone on another podcast, and they were saying that were used to being at home for the church services, and they would get all snuggled in bed in their pajamas with their kids and watching in bed. And she said something interesting. She said, and I love what you brought up with going back to the stage, because she said, my posture, my physical posture affected my spiritual posture, almost like I was watching it for entertainment rather than coming to worship God and to hear from his word. So she said after that, they would get dressed up, get all nice and then stand for the music and their posture prepared to hear the word. And she said that it really affected her, and she encouraged people to take that posture. So it's not just, another show on the internet you're watching.
Right, exactly.
It's funny, at the church I go to, the leadership said, hey, when we do this thing, maybe refrain from conversation, because you know how you can have conversations and whatnot. So everybody's talking over the pastor's teaching, and hey, how are you, Johnny? How are you, Bill? Hey, it's good to see you. Say, wait a minute, you guys, let's listen to the pastor's message here. So
Right.
That's a challenge, I guess, for all of us. We're excited to see people, but hey, it's church. Let's spend some time in the word, and let's let the pastor lead us.
Amen.
So that's good, man. I'm glad everything's okay, Lance, and that's really good and encouraging to hear. Hey, let's talk about the Endurance Conference. We're all pretty invested in it. I've been editing it like crazy. I know your message. I stole your message already, Lance. I've been speaking it to the neighbors and whatnot. No. But I put my name on it.
So what we say, Peter, what we say as pastors that do this for a living: you don't steal, you glean.
Yes.
Glean.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's Christian stealing, right?
That's
Exactly.
smart. I like that.
Yes. Glean it. Yeah.
So true. I've been in a few messages where I heard a message and I'm listening to the guy and I go, I've heard that before. Wait a minit.
I think I've heard this before. Yeah.
As long as you don't glean the Snicker bar from 7-Eleven, that's what you don't glean.
There you go. Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how did you get involved with the Endure Conference? How did that come about?
So Ron, the pastor of Calvary Chapel Hilo, he was talking with Bill Holdridge. Bill is a longtime Calvary Chapel pastor who retired, turned the work over to his son Nate, who's just killing it in Monterey. And Bill started a ministry called Poimen, which is the Greek word for shepherd. Poimen Ministries, which is a bunch of retired Calvary Chapel pastors who then go to churches and help them that when they're in transition. They've lost their pastor's retiring, doesn't really have anybody to turn the work over to. And so they help in that transition phase. And Ron was speaking with Bill, I'm not sure where, but Ron was saying, hey, I really want to do a prophecy conference in Hilo. There's not a lot of awareness about Bible prophecy, end times prophecy in my area, and I think we really need that. And so I'm thinking about putting a conference together. Who would you suggest as speakers? And Bill mentioned my name because he had heard me teach on prophecy, and he said, you should check out Lance. So
awesome.
Oh, that's cool. Who would have thought? Yeah. Well, hey, your message is entitled "The Lie," which is quite interesting. Can you give us a little snippet without giving away too much of what your message is about? It's about to launch, and for those of you who are watching, I encourage you check out Lance's session. It's absolutely amazing. I'm not sure if people should go in order. I think you're session number 6, which I found really interesting, by the way, number 6. Anyway, won't go there. Lance, give us a snippet.
At least it wasn't number 666.
That'd have been a lot of editing.
Yeah.
So
it felt like that.
It did. The title is called "The Lie" because it's based on 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where the Apostle Paul, in writing to the church in Thessalonica, he's writing to correct them because they had gotten messed up in their eschatology, their understanding of the end times. And they were concerned that maybe they were in the tribulation, and that didn't fit because Paul had taught them that the rapture would occur before the tribulation. And so they had freaked out that maybe they had missed something. And so he writes to settle them. And then he goes on and he talks about some of the things that are going to happen. And one of the things that he mentions is that in the end times, because people will have rejected the truth, that God would turn them over, that they should believe the lie. And that's really interesting because in Greek, the definite article the is much more important to grammar than it is in English. The indefinite article a, it's not as defined, it's not as specific. In Greek, when you say the, it's speaking to something specific. And so Paul, when he says that they should believe the lie, he's pointing to a specific lie. In the Bible, we have this principle of interpretation called the rule of first use. And it says the first time you encounter something kind of sets the pace for it through the rest of Scripture. Well, the first lie, we know, was the lie that Satan told Eve, that if she ate of the forbidden fruit, she could be what? Like God. And so that's the lie. In the end times, people will be set up because they have rejected the truth in Jesus Christ, the gospel. They will be given over to believe this great deception that's going to come called the lie. And so I've always been interested by that phrase. And I began to notice some trends that were taking place some years ago that I believed were leading the world to be set up to accept this idea that we can become gods. And it's a movement known as transhumanism. And so that's what my talk is on, kind of charting the progress of transhumanism and how the world is being clearly set up for this belief.
Yeah, and the thing is, for those of you who are watching, you'll never be the same after you watch Lance's message, because now, as you do when you're in a stay-at-home order, you try and find some sort of entertainment. So they had CBS Access, they had it 30 days free. Perfect. I've always wanted to watch this new Star Trek thing. I started watching it, and guess what? It was transhumanistic all over the place. I was like, oh my gosh, I was watching it. This is just, again, part of the setup, part of what's going on. Well, I just couldn't believe it. It was so blown away. Yeah. What were you going to say, Doug?
If I could add to that, Lance, there was a lot of speakers there, obviously, that they shared things. I love what John Miller shared. I love what Jay McCarl shared, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Brett Miller Jr. And there's snippets of what each of them said that really still resonate with me. I'm still chewing on them right now. But your topic of the lie, it spun me, man. And I think a lot of people would relate to that, because as we're listening, as you were first talking and you were discussing, I'm not going to share exactly what you were saying because I want people to watch it, but at first I was like, yeah, right. Yeah. I've heard goofy stuff like this before. Here we go. But the more you got into it, the more I was like, oh, wow, that's true. Oh, wow. And you were pointing out things, and it was like, it almost took my breath away. And I'm really looking forward to other people seeing this, and I want to watch it again because it's scary and very real, what you talked about.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed.
Well, Doug, you can watch it again beginning on Saturday, April 11th. How's that? That's pretty good, isn't it? That's April 11th, and all you have to do is sign up to call a stream. But hey, I'm going to admit something. Please don't tell anybody else. This is a secret.
Okay.
But I was watching it. I'm editing it, and I'm adding the graphics you provided, and I'm creating it onto the video platform. And I got to a point where I actually was teary-eyed. It really hit me so hard. And I'm not going to even tell you why. But yes, I kind of cried. But I'm wondering if anybody will get that feeling as well. Because I guess it was really hard and sad to see that deception. There's so many people that are going to be deceived. And that's what really hit me. Really hit me hard. But
so
hey, Lance. So,
real quick, one of the things that has happened to people that hear this talk, like you, Doug, a lot of people, they're like, oh, this is science fiction.
Right.
Come on. And then they leave the conference, and then they listen to the news, and then they send me an email, and they got links to all. I go, I kind of heard your talk and went, but now all of a sudden their eyes are open and they realize, wait a minute, I've been barraged with this stuff for a while and didn't connect it. I didn't realize how actually this is a part of Bible prophecy. Wow. The number one genre in science fiction books today is, guess on what subject? Transhumanism.
Wow.
It's the number one, far and away, number one subject of science fiction that's being produced today. And
Crazy.
yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely amazing. It's something else. With that and with what we're facing right now, we're in unprecedented times. I love that word, unprecedented. I'm hearing it a lot, hearing it from the president everywhere you go. And it's an unprecedented time. Thinking now where we are right now compared to where we were 6 weeks ago, has it changed for you? Do you think it's magnified? Is what you taught on and you're thinking about Bible prophecy, is there a difference?
So I would say that this crisis that we're in and the vast measures that the government has taken to mitigate its spread of the coronavirus has made us realize how very fragile the planet is, number one. And number two, how readily people are willing to accept a fundamental change to their entire lifestyle simply because a crisis faces. So if people don't realize that as a conditioning of the world mind to accept huge culture shifting changes, I don't know what else is. And that is exactly what we see the Bible saying is going to happen in the end times, is global movements that position people to make decisions en masse. And that what the whole world has been reoriented in its economy and its relationships because of this one thing, the whole globe.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah,
crazy.
it's so interesting. Go ahead, Doug.
No, I was going to say the I don't know if this is the right word. The fragility, is that a word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The fragility of our systems is so scary to see. How quickly everything has just and who knows what it's going to look like coming back out of this. That's kind of scary to think about too.
Right.
We as an American, all growing up, I mean, it's been a big boast, a huge pride of the strength of our nation, the strength of our country, and just to see, I mean, it's not just for our country, but for the whole world, but just to see how, man, just the scales can go so quick and so easy. Really scary.
Yeah.
It is. Hey, so Lance, we're about to release this conference. Who is this conference for? I mean, who's going to benefit from watching this, and why? Or should some people stay away from it? Is it a warning thing? Or maybe it's only for who's it for?
Literally for anybody. Ron did such a great job of getting together a team of speakers that would appeal to different groups and to where people are different. Unbelievers would, I think, learn a lot from this. Baby Christians, mature Christians, even people that already have a good background in the subject of eschatology, the study of the end times, because this is stuff that, quite frankly, has been neglected for the last 20 years. There was a lot of interest in the end times in the late 70s, early 80s. Some unfortunate, unwise things were said and claims were made that caused a lot of Christians to really kind of push Bible prophecy to the sideline. The message has been subtly and not so subtly communicated to pastors. Don't teach on this, it's divisive. And the Bible's very clear that it is those that look for the coming of the Lord who will be motivated to live in a way to be ready for him. So we shouldn't be neglecting Bible prophecy. We should be investing in it.
Yeah. And I have to say that, I don't know about your thoughts, Doug, but my thoughts about the conference is that it really, it makes things very clear. I think Bible prophecy can be very confusing and depending on what you hear and everything, but it was such a biblical point of view and very clear and easy to understand. And it just really helps you to get an overall picture of what's going on. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to it than that was covered, but it was what we really needed to hear. So I believe it's what the church needs to hear. I believe it's really timely. I think this is really something that any believer should watch. And especially if you're a believer, you have friends that scoff you and say, oh yeah, right, prophecy, Bible. This is the thing to share with them. Have a what do they call it, a watch party or something, and watch it with them. Well, I guess you can't in the same room, but you know what I mean. Yeah, Doug, what do you think?
Well, Lance, you bring up a really good point. The world has a bad taste in its mouth about prophecy. You have the Mayan calendar, you have 2012, Nostradamus, Y2K. I mean, not to say that those Y2K was a prophecy or any of that or anything to do with the Bible, but people wrap it all up into one big pile, right? And and so it gives the world a bad taste. And I love this conference because there's really no pizzazz. There's really no it's teaching straight from what the Bible has said and breaking it down. And I can really appreciate that.
Doug, I mean, Lance is pretty pizzazzy.
Yes, you are. But I will say, and that's a good point, because it wasn't dry. It wasn't boring, the content. It was full of energy and full of life, but it also wasn't coated with sensationalism either.
Yeah, that's
right? And that's valuable.
Yeah. And you got Jack Hibbs, who's just an amazing teacher, and he's a big room speaker, as we say, but he has this ability to make you feel like he's talking right to you as a person individually. It's just it's an amazing gift. I know that I'm not that flashy guy, but I do make nice PowerPoints. You got to admit, Pete, I make really good PowerPoints. Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you, they're really good. I had to clean them up a bit, Lance, but overall, I made it work for video. But yeah, I really appreciate that. No, it's really good, and that's why I love watching your message too. There was a lot there. I mean, some of the stuff you brought up. Oh man, you guys have to watch it. And it's going to be great. So in closing, guys, I mean, we can't go on forever. Pastor Lance, what kind of encouragement can you give the viewers of this and anybody logged in watching this? What kind of encouragement could you give in light of course, the unprecedented time we're in, Easter, Bible prophecy? What kind of encouragement would you give?
Well, let me end by saying thanks for the opportunity to share with your audience. And by way of encouragement, I'm a student of history. I have a church history podcast. In fact, I was just working on it just before the interview. Let's not forget that while we live in this moment and things seem really out of control and crazy with this crisis that we're in, this is not the first time the world has faced a crisis of culture-shaping dimension. The Black Plague in the Middle Ages depopulated entire regions, a half of the population dead. Imagine driving down your street and half the houses being empty because the people there died. Half the businesses, the owners died, all the workers died. I mean, we're not going to see that kind of loss because of this crisis, but our world has seen that before. And listen, we're still here. The church is still here. Jesus said, the gates of hell would not prevail against the church. I love the saying, the church is an anvil that has worn out many hammers. There's going to be a lot of trials that the world is going to face and that are going to come against the church. But Jesus Christ is the Lord of the church. He is seated on his throne. He's not wringing his hands. He's not wearing a mask. He's not wearing rubber gloves. He's just fine. He's not worried. He already stands at the end of history, beckoning us to come to him. So folks, listen, do not fret, do not worry, do not fear. We're going to come through this because Jesus Christ is Lord.
Great word. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Lance, so much. And we're looking forward to releasing the Endure Conference and your message. And it's going to be great to see what kind of response we get from people. And we'll make sure to get you the link to, Lance, so you can check it out and let your body know, let the church know there. Yeah. And also, Doug, let's make sure we put that link up. So this podcast you do, that's available to anybody, the historical podcast. What's it called?
History of the Christian Church. Communio Sanctorum, History of the Christian Church.
Awesome.
fantastic.
Awesome.
We'll get that from you.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
God bless.
And
God bless you too.